Hello, and welcome once again to Family Historian. My name is Stephen Conti. Tonight I have a show for my lady viewers because we are going to feature the best hereditary society in the world, the Daughters of the American Revolution, or more commonly known as the DAR. And joining me on tonight's show, I am very honored to have as my guest a real live daughter of the American Revolution. Her name is Bobby Bailey. Bobby is currently the registrar for the Morristown, New Jersey chapter of the DAR, and she's going to teach us how you out there can join her wonderful society, the Daughters of the American Revolution. So all you gals out there, please take notes. And now let's welcome Bobby Bailey. Bobby, welcome to my show.
Thanks, Stephen. I'm happy to be here.
Great. Now, Bobby, before we get into the origins of the DAR and how to join, let's talk about your patriot ancestor. What was his name and where was he from and where did he serve?
Sure. His name was Henry Schaefer. He was of German ancestry, was born in Lancaster, Pennsylvania in 1760. His family moved west to the Pittsburgh area, and he served as a private in the militia during the American Revolution, and he died in 1850 in the Pittsburgh area.
Right. So if I do the math, he was an 18-year-old young man.
Yes, he was.
When he fought in the American Revolution.
Yes, he was.
And he died in what year again?
1850. He was 90 years old.
And that was a long lifespan.
Sure was.
For people at that time. Okay, let's talk about the origins of the DAR. And it was in response to the SAR, which is Sons of the American Revolution, and you ladies wanted equal time. So in what year was it founded?
It was founded in 1890.
Right, and by four lovely ladies, and I have their names here, Mary Disha, Mary, in alphabetical order, okay, Mary Disha, Mary Lockwood, Ellen Walworth, and Eugenia Washington. Any relation to you know who?
I don't know.
We don't know, but that's something there. And the headquarters of the DAR is in Washington, D.C., and we have a photo of that and the beautiful monument to these four founding women.
Yes.
And also the insignia. What does the insignia signify? Your insignia?
Well, it's a spinning wheel with 13 spokes.
Right.
To symbolize, of course, the 13 colonies.
Right, right. Now, let's start from the very beginning. What is the criteria for a woman who wants to join the DAR? What do you have to do?
Sure.
What do you have to be?
Sure. The DAR is open to any woman 18 years or older who can trace her bloodline lineage, her ancestry, to someone who supported the cause for independence. And that could have been through military service, like my Henry Schaefer, or it could be through civil service, helping these fledgling governments through serving on a jury, being a sheriff, any of the many civil services, or patriotic duty, which is in some way financially supporting the Army and the cause for independence, paying supply taxes, providing material aid to the Army.
Now, also, I heard that an older man who was too old to serve would have a younger man fight in his stead. Have you heard that? And then the descendant of that older man would be eligible for membership?
There were many reasons why there would be substitutes, where you could hire a substitute to serve in your stead. And those substitutes are also treated as military service.
Right. And you do recognize illegitimate descendants. Is that something new now?
I don't know that it's new, but certainly the DAR doesn't care about legitimacy. In other words, we care tremendously
Yes.
that you can trace parentage from
Right.
one generation to the next.
Right.
But honestly, we don't care if those parents were married or not when the child was born. We just need to prove that they are the parents of that next generation at every generation.
You need that DNA bloodline. That's
Yes,
the number one thing.
That's the number one thing.
Also, I know it's rare, but can a woman descend from another woman who was
Absolutely.
active in the revolution?
Absolutely. I mean, there are a few women who served in various capacities. That's relatively rare, but there are a number of women who provided material aid. The women patriots are a little trickier because in that era, if a woman was married,
Yeah.
then the assets of the family belonged to the husband.
Right, right.
So most of the female patriots are widows. In
Right.
other words, their husband was gone and they provided material aid, so it's absolutely traceable to that woman
Right.
Providing the service.
But descendants do exist.
Oh, absolutely.
Great. Now, I know in all of your creativity, Bobby has prepared a step-by-step flow chart.
Well, the very first step is the initial contact. Reach out to the DAR and express your interest. And that can happen a couple of ways. One is you can go to the DAR website, which is just dar.org, and from there, right on the first page is information about becoming a member, and you can submit a little form that says you're interested, and the DAR will match you with a chapter near you. Or the other is if you know of a chapter that you want to join, maybe you have friends there or
Right.
you've seen their website or whatever, you can contact a chapter directly.
Right.
And so that's the very first thing. And the reason that's so important is because the next step is doing the research, and you need help from a chapter registrar like me.
That's where you come in.
Exactly.
Okay. Very good.
That registrar is your partner in working through the application process.
Right.
And you've got to prove your lineage with proof of birth and death and parentage, like we talked about. Sometimes, like in my case, if you're proving a brand new patriot, you've got to prove their service, you've got to prove their residence. And, it's fairly complex, and there are two reasons how the registrar can help you. Firstly is we know all the rules. There
Yes.
are a fairly complex number of guidelines and rules
Right,
and instructions. They vary generation by generation. New generations have more stringent requirements
Yes, yes.
than older generations, and the registrars understand that. And then the second reason is if you're working on an application and you can link to anybody ever in the years of DAR that has already proven that information, you don't need to prove that again.
Right.
Now, a lot of that information is available to the public on the DAR website, but the registrars are very comfortable with navigating that website,
Yes.
can do it faster, can do it more thoroughly, and can help you simplify your search if half of the job is already done for you.
Because you want members, and so that's what you are there for, to help the lady become a member.
Absolutely.
And what is the next step now that we have?
Well, the next step is actually preparing the application. The application is a 4-page form. It's, fairly complex,
Right.
but we do not ask the applicants to actually understand the formatting requirements of
right.
the application themselves. The registrars almost always will
Right.
do the formatting of the application. They take the research that you did in step 2 and then format it into the application. Of course, you've got to sign the application. The registrar has to sign it.
Right.
The regent or the leader of that chapter has to sign it.
All right.
And then it gets sent into the DAR national office in that beautiful building in
Washington,
D.C.
D.C. And then they have a team of genealogists on staff
Yes.
who review the work.
Yes.
And I know that we use lots of initials nowadays. AIR.
AIR.
AIR. What does that stand for? I know
Sure.
DAR, but what is AIR?
Sure. It stands for additional information required. So the genealogist will review the prepared paperwork with all the proof documents, and there are really one of two outcomes. One is you get verified. Congratulations. You know, you're joining the DAR. You're in.
Right.
The other outcome is they'll ask for more information. They will write you a letter, and we refer to it as an AIR letter, meaning they're asking for more information, additional information required. And they'll be very specific in, you know, what they're not convinced of, what they need better proof of. And they'll itemize those things. And then you have, you know, more opportunities to kind of fill in those gaps.
And then hopefully you will become a daughter.
And hopefully you'll become a daughter.
All
Exactly.
Right, good. Now we have some wonderful visuals of all these documents that Bobby has spoken of. Let's start the worksheet. Now that is your first paper, which you help the woman with, the worksheet.
Exactly, and that's in that step 2 in the genealogy research.
Right.
You could theoretically jump directly to the format of the application, but that's somewhat problematic in that it allows for you to miss certain proofs that are required. So I like to use, and many registrars do, a worksheet in advance that basically steps you through at each generation, starting with generation 1,
which
yourself,
is you.
Generation 2, your parents, 3, your grandparents,
all the way back to the patriot.
All the way back to the patriot, and each fact that you need to prove is right there on that worksheet, and the worksheet is formatted so you put the fact and then you put right next to it, what's my proof of that
You
fact?
have to have the record reference there.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, primary sources. Primary sources are original sources.
Right.
Okay, and this is what the DAR must have.
We strongly prefer primary sources.
Let's look at some examples. Birth, marriage, and death records. Okay, not certificates, record. There's a difference between a record and a certificate.
Although we certainly accept certificates as well, so I'm using that term broadly. Birth records might be, you know, the town has a ledger or a summary of all the births, and that would be a birth record. Of course, a birth certificate is the kind of thing we all probably have stashed away somewhere in our home. That is, you know, the certificate that says, you know, you were born at such and such hospital on such and such day, or your parents by name.
And then church records are original sources. Okay, I'm stressing the word primary and original. Okay.
So those would be for baptisms, burials, things like that.
Bibles, family Bibles will have a lot of information, and you've come across those many times, and you accept a Bible record.
Oh, yeah, in particular for old records. You know, if you go back to the 1700s, early 1800s, or even late 1800s, there were no birth certificates or death certificates, and so we do rely on Bible records.
And the center of the Bible is the family records.
Exactly. They would keep track of the happenings in that family, and those are pretty precious. And in fact, in the DAR library, we have a massive repository of family Bible records that your registrar can get access to see if that can help you maybe fill in some gaps on your application.
Now, here's a very interesting one, and I never knew this until you came along. Original tombstones. I'm sure if you go into an old graveyard, you will see American flags on tombstones that the DAR ladies are responsible for, but the tombstone has to be the earliest one, the original one.
The original one. If it's been replaced by a modern tombstone, then we can't use that. But yeah, the tombstones, anything that is legible and readable on that tombstone can be used if it names, if it identifies the birth date, the death date, the wife of or husband of or child of, that information that's legible about the family and that person's birth and death can absolutely be used.
And sometimes on the original tombstone, it will name the man's rank. And sometimes.
Yes, sometimes it does, though the tombstone cannot be used to prove military service.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So
it cannot. Oh, that's interesting.
Right.
Just genealogical information.
Exactly. It became a thing that we call them the Kentucky Colonels. People who were given titles that were honorary, but they're not actually directly related to their military service, and so we need better proof of service in a government record of some kind.
Now we come to the military records, and this is the most popular one, Revolutionary War pension records.
My favorite.
Okay, and there's a site that you can go to nowadays for all military records. What is that site?
Well, the pension files are stored by the National Archives. They are reachable through Ancestry.com or also through Fold3.com.
Right.
And those if you are fortunate enough to have a pension record for your patriot, they are real gems because they had to testify about the details of their service. A lot of times they will name that when they got married, their wives. It might have death information recorded in the pension record, birth information recorded in their testimony.
And of course their service.
And of course their service. So those are a real blessing if you have it.
And what is a muster roll?
Well, during the war, the various companies had to keep records of who was serving in that company, week by week, month by month, year by year, and they were recorded in handwritten muster rolls.
Muster up the troops.
Mustering up the troops, and many of those muster rolls are preserved. And they're available online also through Ancestry or Fold3, and they're great, or payrolls.
Yes, and you mentioned, I guess this is similar to the muster roll, a compiled military service record.
Right.
How does that differ from the muster roll, or is it the same?
The CMSR.
Yeah.
So what happened is, many years ago, the federal government took all those muster rolls and payrolls and summarized them into cleaner forms. Compiled, exactly. And they're easier to read. They're simpler. There's one for each soldier that they have a record of, and those are available also online, and they're very useful as well.
Now, sometimes in old newspapers, in the obituary, they would list if the man was a Revolutionary War veteran, and you accept that as well.
No,
you do not. Okay.
But it's an important clue.
Oh, that's just a clue that will take you to that.
Exactly. In fact, I used exactly that clue to find my own patriot. Actually, it was his daughter's obituary that said she's the daughter of a Revolutionary patriot. I'm like, I'll be darned.
Yeah.
And so I dug through and traced her.
Would that be a secondary source then, the obituary?
No, an obituary is a primary source but you can't use it to prove military
I
service.
understand.
It's a primary source for birth, death,
It will
if it names,
right.
daughter of.
It will take you to the next record.
Exactly.
Like in your case.
Exactly.
Now, the secondary source, now there are exceptions on this. There was a wonderful lady in Morristown, we both knew of her, Barbara Hoskins, who wrote a very fine book about what was it called? It was men who served in the Revolution.
Men from Morris County, New Jersey, who served in the American Revolution. Yeah, it's a very nice book. In fact, we've been working
Yes.
to update the information in it, and because Barbara did wonderful work.
Yes.
But that was in the 1970s.
Right.
50 years later, we have more access to more information.
Yeah.
But yeah, we cannot use that as a primary source. But it
Another
offers
clue.
wonderful clues.
Another clue.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, there are exceptions in these. Every state has an exception in the secondary source. And we'll use the one for Massachusetts. I'm sure New Jersey has one also. But what is the one for Massachusetts that is accepted?
Yeah, Massachusetts Soldiers and Sailors.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and the reason that's acceptable, even though it's compiled,
Yeah.
is it is directly traceable
Mm-hmm.
to primary source information. So it was directly derived from
Yeah.
the primary source, therefore you can use it because you can rely on its linkage back to the original
Right.
documents.
So now, once the lady has done all of this research, which you help her with or
Yes.
advise her with, then she gets the application for membership.
Yes.
All right? And that's where she finds out if she's accepted or if she's in AIR.
Yes.
Am I right on the right
Right.
track
We prepare
here?
the application. Again, 4 pages, a cover page with kind of some boilerplate information. Page 2 lists her lineage. Page 3 lists her sources for that lineage,
Okay.
generation by generation.
Right.
And then page 4 summarizes the patriot. What was their service? What is the proof for their service? Where did they live? And that's what actually gets sent in with copies of the proof documents.
So
and
the
gets reviewed.
genealogists in Washington, they are the final judges in this.
Yes, they are.
So you're the middle person here.
I'm the middle person. I try to get them through the door,
Right.
but I don't get to make a decision on
Right.
whether they're accepted or not.
Right, right.
So-
Now, the DAR is very active in many things, and I know you're very proud of the Morristown chapter. They deal with they sponsor or have the Skyler Hamilton House.
Yes.
Tell us about that when it was built and a famous doctor lived there.
Yes. So the Skyler Hamilton House is owned by the Morristown chapter DAR. We bought it 101 years ago in
Yes.
1923.
Right.
The house actually dates from around 1760, when we were, of course, still a British colony.
Right.
And during the Revolution, it was owned by a Dr. Jabez Campfield. He was the very first doctor in Morristown. He was a surgeon, a regimental surgeon during the Revolution. And after the Revolution, he did a number of things to help sort of grow and develop Morristown and Morris County. The house is named Skyler Hamilton primarily because it's linked to the romance between Alexander Hamilton and his future wife, Elizabeth Skyler. She was staying in the house during one of the winters that the Continental Army
Yes.
spent in Morristown. She was staying in the house, and Alexander Hamilton was staying next door with General Washington in his headquarters in the Ford Mansion, and let's just say romance blossomed while
Yes.
they were next door neighbors, and
Yeah.
they finished that winter engaged.
Yeah. Does Jabez have any descendants?
Yes, he does. And we've had the pleasure of meeting some of them. Last year we had a big ceremony to place a gravestone and a bronze plaque for Dr. Campfield, and we found some descendants and
Really?
invited them to participate in the service with us, and it made it very, very special.
Are some of them members of the DAR? Many of the lady descendants, are they?
Some of them are, absolutely.
Right, right.
And in fact, one of our newest members is someone that was introduced to us through that ceremony, and she descends from the Campfields, and she's now a member of the Morristown chapter.
Wonderful. Now, I see that you have a ribbon here. The DAR ladies love their ribbons and medals. And what does that signify, Bobby?
Well, at the bottom is our insignia, the spinning wheel that we talked about.
Right, right.
At the top is a chapter bar, and so it says Morristown because I'm in the Morristown chapter. And these bars right here, you can get one for each patriot. And now some women have much bigger displays of pins. You can get pins for special things that you do, special projects that you work on, offices that you've held.
Right.
I keep the
It's
pins pretty simple.
It's very nice, yeah. The DAR has many wonderful members, many women that you know, and it's very diverse. Many African American women are now in the DAR, Asian women. There are chapters all over the world. If you had that ancestor who fought in the American Revolution, you are eligible for membership. And I'm just going to mention some wonderful ladies. You all know them, who are members of the DAR. Clara Barton, who was very popular during the Civil War, yes. Susan B. Anthony. Now, here's two women who are from diverse backgrounds, but the one thing they have in common is that they're both daughters of the American Revolution. Bo Derek and Grandma Moses are both daughters of the American Revolution. A brand new member and a wonderful member, Carol Burnett, the comedian that we all love, and she just found out she was a member.
Yes, through Finding Your Roots, the TV show with Dr. Henry Louis Gates, and they found she had a linkage to a revolutionary patriot.
And what did she say? And she said,
something like, well, I want to join.
Right,
and so he helped her prepare her paperwork, and she's now happily a DAR member.
Right. And another wonderful movie star, Ginger Rogers, who I believe is a descendant of Mary Ball, who was the mother of George Washington. Ginger Rogers, a very patriotic woman. Before we close, I want you to tell our viewers the 3 mission words of the DAR, because they are very, very impressive. Can you tell us what your society stands for?
Absolutely. So we are a lineage society, but we are a service organization.
Yes.
And our mission is threefold. Education, historic preservation, and patriotism. We have projects that involve all 3 of those, and we are extremely active in naturalization ceremonies and preserving historic artifacts.
So, in other words, you gals are right in the trenches.
Yes,
okay,
helping
it's
veterans.
not, we have the stereotypical view of the DAR ladies sipping tea and all of that, but you gals are right with the people.
Absolutely.
Education, patriotism, and historic preservation, which is so important nowadays. Well, Bobby, thank you so much for coming on my show. Bobby Bailey, the registrar for the Morristown chapter of the DAR. My name is Stephen Conti, and remember, we are all descendants of ancient civilizations. Genealogy is your key to the history of your family. And so until next time, this is Stephen Conti wishing you the very best of luck in your research, and above all, happy ancestor hunting. Good night.